Welcome back,
awesome.
Everybody. We're smiling because I don't know if everybody knows, but it was our video man Jordan's birthday on the weekend. So happy birthday, Jordan. We appreciate you. And it was a good one.
Yeah.
Comic-Con apparently was the place of choice for this weekend for many people.
Yeah,
So Jordan, Jen, and Chloe, you went down as well?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I took Kennedy, our 2.5-year-old. She loved it. There's a lot to look at. We didn't last very long because she's 2 and it's crazy.
Yep.
But yeah, lots of costumes and.
Yep. And wow factor.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it was good. It was a lot of fun.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to actual real estate things.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so we're going to talk a bit about pricing strategies and how to kind of manage this conversation with your sellers so that you're pricing it right, but also so that you're helping your sellers come to reality of kind of where we're at in the market. You know, from your seller's perspective, we are in a boom-bust city. That's where we are. That's where we live and operate and work. And their house was probably worth a heck of a lot more money than it is today. And sellers tend to kind of keep those numbers in their head. I'm sure, as you all know, as we've both experienced, they get a number in their head and they get stubborn about it. So how do you kind of work through that with your sellers?
Yes. Can I give you a scenario and ask what would CM do?
Okay, I'm scared. Let's do it.
For a lot of you out there, sometimes you'll say, "What will GB do? Gary Brand do?" It's kind of a funny thing with a lot of us. So what would CM do?
All right.
Picture this:
Okay.
you've got a seller that you're doing a CMA for.
Yep.
They're thinking about listing, and you've ran your CMA, and the home is worth 500 flat.
Okay.
They want you to list at 540.
Okay.
Talk to me about how you would handle that, how you would, I guess, set their expectations, and maybe it's not, of course, that we're going to try to convince them,
Yeah.
but we're going to show them and allow them to arrive at decisions themselves without shooting themselves in the foot. So,
Okay.
property's worth 500.
Okay. I would say the first conversation I want to have is, where are they getting the 540 from? I want to understand their thought process so that I can help explain the why it's not that also. So if they got a number, okay, for me specifically, I did annual investment reviews with my clients. You all know that. I'm sure you've seen the videos, etc. If I told them it was worth 540 2 years ago or something like that, then it's my job to explain to them why it's now not worth 540.
Right.
So that's a discussion that you have to have that's more about what has happened in the market, showing them statistics. The HPI index is great for that. If you've never used it, it's on Kreblink. There's a button that says Home Price Index. You click it, and it will give you a breakdown of what's happened in that community for the last several years. So if 2 years ago it's showing me it's down 6% or 10% or whatever that number is,
Right.
That's a pretty solid way to demonstrate to them what's happening with our market in the last couple of years.
Right.
Now, if the 540 is coming from other agents, that's a completely different conversation. A lot of clients or a lot of sellers will sit down with several agents and get pricing from several agents so that they, it's a decision-making process.
Yes.
Who are you going to hire? How much are they going to list your house for? And how much is it going to cost me? More or less. That's what sellers are thinking through. So the conversation is an explanatory one about how our industry works. Pricing is subjective. So walking them through step by step, how you got to this number. It's not a number that you just pulled out of the air.
That's right.
There's math and stats that go behind everything that you're doing in your market analysis. And if there's not, come talk to one of us and we'll help you. You don't want to just be pulling numbers out of the air. And explaining to them how it's subjective, but also there is an element to agents pumping numbers because they want listings. And that's probably not kosher for me to say out loud, but I'm going to say it anyway because we all know that it happens. We've all been in listing situations where you're sitting down with real numbers and the sellers across the table from you are saying, well, agent X told me that they could sell this house for 540.
Yes.
Okay, let's break that down. So I would normally go into a conversation about pricing is subjective. Every agent's going to come up with a different price. There's not one specific dollar value. Market value is going to be what you're willing to sell it for and what the buyers are willing to pay for it. But at the same time, you don't want to be starting a relationship with your sellers based on fluff numbers.
Right.
Because then you're going to have to really explain to them why you're asking for price reductions down the road. Nobody wants to do that.
No.
Unless it's a strategy that you've discussed up front. You want your numbers to mean something. And so I suggest, strongly, that your numbers are solid and concrete and based on stats and numbers and actual market information, and you're not just going with what your seller wants. Because let's face it, in this market, if you're not priced properly, you could be stuck holding a whole whack of listings, a whole lot of money out of your pocket, with not a lot of guarantee that those are going to sell.
Right.
So, in my opinion, as a business decision, you want to make sure that you're starting off with a strong number. Right.
Tell me about if you were to study the seller's position in life.
Yeah.
I.e., they brought you in because maybe they've lost a job.
Yeah.
Maybe they both lost jobs and now they're working for half of what they used to.
Yep.
It's one of those things where sometimes we can clearly see from their financials that they present to us that they're going to be in a position, unfortunately, where they have to sell.
Right.
That 540, now you've helped them understand why that's maybe out to lunch, right? Perhaps if they were to list with you at 520, would you then consider taking the listing? And if so, we've discussed some strategies.
Yeah.
Tell everybody the strategy you would have if you took the listing at 520.
Sure.
What stuff you'd have in place so that you could justify taking it.
So this is something that I did when I was selling, and it's not going to be for everyone. But for me, as a strategy, as a way to compromise with my sellers, if I felt that the list price that they wanted was not completely ludicrous, I would agree to take it at an overpriced number, but I would only do it if they would sign a ahead of time, a price drop in advance.
Yep.
So it wouldn't kick into whatever date you put on there, but that gives your seller kind of the reassurance that you've tried at their price. Call it 520 or 540, whatever you think is reasonable or whatever you guys agree to. And then if it hasn't sold in, say, 2 weeks, then you drop it down to the price that you feel is correct.
Yep.
And then that way your seller feels like they're getting their way and they're getting the opportunity to sell it at that price that they want to sell it at.
Yes.
But if they do really want to sell it and you really want to take the listing, then you can do a pre-signed price drop.
Yep.
Yep.
I don't know about you, I'm sure you've been in a situation, and I know our agents have, where you take on a listing and the seller is adamant that they need to get a certain amount of money for their property. Fast forward 6 weeks, it hasn't sold, and then an offer comes in that's 15 grand below anything they ever said that they would accept, and they take it. And it's almost like you're hit out of left field because you're shocked that they're taking it.
Right.
But it's because over time things change.
Yeah.
People's scenarios change. We're all kind of become counselors in this industry with people that are put in tough situations. And when we can see that they're going to have to sell at some point and you're the right person for the job, I would always be the first to say, okay, well, let's put everything aside right now. Let's fast forward 2 months and we haven't sold.
Yeah.
How does your financial position look at that time? And are we in a position where you guys have to sell? I would ask them that point blank.
Right.
Because if I end up getting this listing, I need to make sure that we've analyzed as much as we can, kind of set some expectations and some framework for how things might end up going, so that it's not a big shock 2 months from now when we finally get an offer and they're so tempted to take it because they have to.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
The pre-listing, the amendment that's pre-signed that maybe is for 4 weeks from now. You know, we haven't gotten much showings, we haven't gotten any offers, so now we're dropping to $4.99.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, seller, that in 2 months or in 6 weeks from now when we do that, if the prices have gone down, we might in fact be chasing the market
We're
down.
chasing it.
So at that point, it might be better to go to $4.89, hypothetically.
Sure.
Right?
I read a study, and this is off topic, kind of, but I want to talk about it for 2 seconds. when I was down at Ninja in Fort Collins, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, they were talking about a study that that agents did about pricing and where you should price properties. And you just mentioned $4.99, so this is what made me think of this. They had a theory, and I've tested this, and I think it works, but I'm not 100% there. But the study is like 100% saying that this is the way to go. That you should list it at $500 on the button rather than the $4.99 because everyone searches online now. Everything is online, digital, etc. So when you're on Realtor.ca or you're on any kind of search engine for properties, people aren't putting $450 to $4.99. They're putting $450 to $500 or $500 to $550. So if you're priced at $500, you're going to be captured in the $450 to $500 bank as well as the $500 to $550. Whereas if you're listed at $4.99, you're going to be missed out on the people who are looking at $500 to $550.
Yes.
So it's not being captured in half the searches. So anyways, just thought I'd throw that out there.
You know what I love about that is you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
We've actually had that discussion before. Yeah.
Oh. There you go.
Well done.
Cool.
You're so CIR before you were even CIR.
There you go.
You didn't even know.
I drank the blue Kool-Aid. Okay.
Great share.
Was there anything else that we wanted to talk about there? Compromising. Oh, there was one more thing that I want to talk about. We've talked about this in the huddles at the South a fair bit about pricing strategies and making it right and compromising with your sellers, etc. One of our agents that comes to the South office is adamant that they kind of test the market without actually putting it on MLS. So their theory is that you don't want that higher price marked on the permanent history of the property. So you know how you can see the history on every property that you look at on MLS. He doesn't like it when that number is shown on MLS. And this is just another person's opinion, so just another idea for you guys. But his theory is that you do a listing contract and you write a term that offsets when you're going to actually list it on MLS. And so you have 3 days or a week or something like that where before it goes on MLS, you're allowed to market it because you have the listing agreement in place. And you're marketing it in kind of different ways to test to see what kind of feedback you're getting from that price range. So things that this agent would do is he puts it on the CIR Facebook page. So he'll say, hey, I have an upcoming listing at this price. Is anyone interested? There's also a private listings Facebook page, like just an agent's Facebook page on there. So he posts it on there as well. And then also on the CIR Live chat thread that you guys are all on right now, he tests it there too. So he tests it in those 3 places. And the way that he talks about this with his clients is, you know, there's 5,500 agents in the city. Between those 3 venues, you've probably captured about a fifth of agents in our city. And if you're not getting good feedback or you don't have any showing requests or any interest at all at that price from doing those strategies, then it's probably not the right price.
Interesting,
So it's just a different kind of way to test it and see if you get any good feedback. And I mean, there's a solid chance that you might even sell it before it even hits the market, which would be great, just internally. But anyways, it's a good way to kind of test the price if you're adamant that you don't want that on the MLS history. Right.
Very interesting strategy. Something
worthwhile
worthwhile to try. You know, something you said right at the beginning of this segment was about talking to your seller and really understanding their position, finding out why they feel the 540 is where they should be at. One thing that's really become apparent in my career, in my life, being a dad, the whole 9, is that at various stages of life, people don't know what they don't know. I mean, we say it all the time. People don't know what they don't know. Well, through talking with your seller and really understanding their scenario, really understanding where they're coming from, you're going to hear them say certain words that you can key in on and basically redirect them to what they should be thinking. And in doing so, from several different conversations, your seller is going to be able to understand a lot more about the selling process, which will help them understand more about pricing it right, and so on and so forth. I think a key objective to people that do take listings that are a little higher is that their communication does need to be consistent and it needs to be often. So in other words, weekly and in a method that makes sense to the seller. Speak in the seller's language. Because if they're getting a consistent message that you've got more competition at X amount of price, we've had 2 or 3 sales at X amount of price, depending on their position, they're going to be hearing you. And whether they want to agree with you or not, eventually they're going to see what's true. And that is that we can't just create prices.
Yeah.
The market tells us what it's worth, not what they think it's worth, right? So I think the more conversations you're having, the more dialogue, the more words you're hearing from them, and really listening first.
Yeah.
Listening first, the old 80-20 rule, listen 80% of the time, speak 20. You need to do that with those sellers in particular.
Yes, I agree.
Try to shape what they're thinking and get them on the right track.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
One thing I thought of while you were talking is retainers. So we are seeing a lot more agents take retainers up front now because we're seeing a lot more sellers. Well, this might not be exclusively why, but we're seeing a lot more sellers that don't really want to compromise on list price, and agents that are basically in a position where either they're taking the listing at a crazy price or they're not taking it. So if you take it, at least there's a possibility that you can sell it.
Right.
Whereas if you don't take it at all, there's no possibility. But you're also not spending a bunch of money on a property that's not ever going to sell at that price.
Right.
So it's you're kind of in a sticky situation where you're put in a position where hopefully you have the confidence to say no if you don't believe strongly that it will sell anywhere near there and you don't want to waste your time. That's a really great place to get to in your career where you feel like you can say no to people. But if you are in a position where you want to take that listing and your clients are adamant on price or they can't sell it any less, we're seeing a lot of agents take retainers. So there's ways that you word this properly in your contracts, and we have the wording from conveyancing on how to do that. So if you are going to do this, reach out to us and we'll send it to you. But essentially, it's an upfront, non-refundable retainer where you're taking probably roughly what your expenses are to list the property. You're taking that in now and it's non-refundable.
Yes.
So that way the risk of your financial situation that you're outputting for that listing is totally mitigated because they're paying you upfront for that portion of the commission. So whether or not the property sells, let's call it $1,000 right now just for easy numbers. That $1,000 comes into CIR because everything has to go through the brokerage, comes back out to you, and you spend it on photography and measurements and whatever else you're going to do.
That's right. Yep.
And the risk is kind of then mitigated. So that way, if you want to take the listing but you are worried about the financial input, then you can take a retainer if your clients are really that adamant, and you can still take the listing if you want.
Some agents in the past and even present, they feel like, okay, a sign is up on a lawn, it's marketing for my business.
Yes.
And while I totally agree with you, if that sign up on the lawn is going to be for a listing that is not going to sell, and it's going to be $800 out of pocket in total for measurements, photos, sign up, the whole line, well, I could think of, let's pretend it was $800 or $1,000.
Yep.
You could boost an ad on social media for a lot less and have a much bigger impact. There's certain things you could be doing. So you've really got to be choosy about what listings you do take on.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan of the retainer, especially for people that are not really thinking clearly as to what their home is worth. Or maybe they're saying that, you know what, I want you to list it for $540. And if I don't get $530, I'm just not going to sell.
Yeah.
In a market where it's worth $500.
Yeah.
Well, that's a listing I'm probably not going to take, or I'm going to take it with the retainer. To cover my costs.
Yep.
Now, this goes against what a lot of realtors, especially older realtors, believe in.
Yes. Well, not just older. We've had pretty, not heated, but passionate discussions about this as well in our huddles. And there's definitely agents that don't believe in this, that believe that, it's if I'm agreeing to take on this listing, it's my job to sell it. I can understand it from both perspectives, where it doesn't fit in their philosophy, and that's totally fine. You don't have to do it.
Yep.
Or it does fit in your philosophy, and you're willing to do it.
Yep.
So wherever you fall on that, it's just an idea.
Right.
It's up to you guys, but.
And I got to shoot out a disclaimer. I don't mean older as an age. I mean longer-term realtors.
Experience.
Yes, experienced
Sure,
realtors.
sure.
That's right.
Yeah.
I would not be shy to take a retainer in this market, especially if I'm really successful at getting listings. I might be carrying 15 listings, of which, who knows? Maybe I'll sell
Yeah.
all 15. Maybe I'll sell 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the income from those 3 might not offset all the effort and time and money for the 15.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And value your time. There was recently a Facebook post put up about what a realtor's time is worth. I genuinely believe a realtor is worth, at the bare minimum, $100 an hour. I really actually think most realtors are worth about $200 to $300 per hour. And how do I get that number? If I'm a brand new agent and I take on a listing,
Yep.
and my first listing takes me, let's say it took me 80 hours, start to finish, to interview,
Sure.
get the listing, everything all said and done. And the average commission, approximately $8,000. Well,
Yep.
80 hours divided by $8,000 is about $100 an hour. And we all know that
That's
it
fair.
doesn't take 80 hours
No.
of your life to sell your first
Well,
listing.
the first few might,
They might.
because you're learning.
They might,
in the
and
process.
then suddenly you get a nice $10,000 commission for 15 hours worth of work,
Yeah.
so on and
Those
so
are
forth.
good.
But when you really think about
Once
it,
in a
you know,
while.
if it took you $1,000 of expenses, plus it took you 10 hours of your life to get a listing up online,
Yep.
everything all said and done,
Yep.
well, that 1,000 is not covering your time.
No.
So please value your time.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
I agree.
Good segment.
We beat that to death.
We did, I think.
Okay.
We'll take a quick break, and then we'll be back for the last segment of the day.